Hello, everyone. As we wait for those who have yet to arrive, please take a minute to just answer the question, what prompted you to say yes to showing up today in the chat? I think this will really help kick off our engagement as we prepare to start the event. Thank you all.
Mhm. Mhm.
For those of you who are not of Spanish-speaking background, I would like to translate the chat comment of Ms. Mireya Escobar, who says that she is interested in this conversation because I'm interested in being informed regarding the topic.
Nora, you need to unmute.
I keep trying to. I apologize for that. I just wanted to translate Ms. Mireya Escobar's comments in Spanish that are in the chat. She says that she is interested in this information and staying informed because she knows people in the city who have been directly impacted by this issue. Thank you for that.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to a New Way Home and Economic Forum on affordable housing in Pomona. We are excited to host you all here tonight to kick off a community conversation about what it means to have access to affordable housing in the city of Pomona. Myself, Michelle, Michael, Freud, and Judy are members of Pomona Leadership Network, Cohort 3. Pomona Leadership Network is a leadership development program put on by the Pomona Community Foundation. And this program is our capstone for the PLN program. The 5 of us came together for this work out of passion for economic development in Pomona, and we landed on affordable housing as our topic of interest. So we've worked diligently over the past 8 months to put this forum together, and we're very excited to present it to you all and to join together in this conversation. Before we move to introduce the rest of our team, we would just like to thank all of our sponsors for the endless support that they have provided us, all of the insights, and just all the feedback as we've worked and volleyed to put this event together. At this time, I'll ask our team to please quickly introduce themselves. I'll go first. My name is Frank Guzman Jr. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a proud lifelong resident of Pomona, and I'm currently studying for a Master's of Public Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. Will you introduce yourself next, Roy?
Hi, everybody. My name is Freud Toriquez. I currently am a resident of Pomona and have worked in Pomona in the past. My role here is to be the tech guy behind the scenes, and any help that you need, just let me know. Thank you. Michelle, you can go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Viorato. I'm not a resident of Pomona. I'm a lifelong resident of the San Gabriel Valley, having lived in different cities in the San Gabriel Valley, and I work full-time at Cal Poly Pomona in government and external affairs. It's great to meet you all today. And next, I will ask Judy to introduce.
Hi, everyone. My name is Judy Crawford. I use she and her pronouns, and I work at Cal Poly Pomona. I oversee a program that supports students with food and housing insecurity. So this topic is very something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm happy to see you all here. And I will pass it on to Michael now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Whitmer. I fell in love with Pomona in 1992 when I first moved there, and lived there until 2012 when I moved into a retirement community called Pilgrim Place in Claremont. My love for the city of Pomona continues, though, and I'm enthusiastic about helping the city find a way to its true destiny as a model city in the Pomona Valley.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I think our hard work on this forum is just a testament of how much we truly love this city. So at this time, I'm very excited to introduce the mayor of the city of Pomona, Mayor Tim Sandoval, who will share some opening remarks to kick our event off. Mayor Tim, whenever you're ready, sir.
I was about to say good morning. It's not quite morning here in Philadelphia. It's about 3 hours ahead of you. It's 9:14. First of all, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you to the Pomona Leadership Network. Thank you, Frank Guzman Jr. You're probably in Boston, aren't you, or Cambridge?
Yep.
It's pretty amazing that we're able to communicate. You have people from Pomona who are communicating across the country on an issue that is not only being discussed in Pomona and in California, but it's being discussed all over the country. I just finished up a 3-day program with the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative, and I can tell you that every city is confronting this issue. Every state is confronting it. But I would argue that Los Angeles County is probably amongst the worst, most challenged areas in the country as it relates to housing affordability. And I know that's probably going to be part of the discussion over the course of the next day or so. So first, I want to thank the organizers, Pomona Leadership Network. I want to thank also the sponsors, our amazing Neighborhood Services Department for the City of Pomona, our development services. I want to thank the Pomona Community Foundation and Chirp Solar Works, Pomona Valley Habitat for Humanity, Public Bank Pomona Valley Study Group, the Latino Roundtable, Pomona Reimagining, Pomona Vision 2030, Bando Populous, and the Cobb Institute. And I say those names because I don't think that we always truly understand how much time and energy it takes to put on something like this. It takes a lot of people, a lot of energy, and it's just truly a reflection of the type of collaboration that happens in this community. So I want to express my thanks to all of you. I also want to thank the participants. I know you wouldn't be on this call if this issue wasn't important to you. And in a moment, I'll just emphasize that it's going to take all of us working together. Shortly after the pandemic hit, I got a call from a young lady who lived with her grandparents and her family. And she was in a panic, and she didn't know what to do. She had just been diagnosed with COVID, and she was really in deep fear that she would somehow get her parents sick, her grandparents sick, and the rest of her family. And she had nowhere to go. And so she called, and at the time, the Fairplex, Sheraton Fairplex had just opened up to take people in. It was one of the first hotels. And through a series of calls and conversations, we were able to get her into a hotel, actually in downtown Los Angeles. But what that moment underscored, and I think what the pandemic underscored, is just how critical the housing crisis is that we have a lot of people not only living on the streets, not only living in cars, living in campers, we have sometimes multiple intergenerational families living together, not always out of want, but oftentimes out of necessity because they simply cannot afford to pay for their own place. And I'm thinking particularly our younger people. I'm happy to say that she's doing well, but I think about if we didn't have something in place, what would have happened to her? What would have happened to her family? And so this conversation that we are going to have over the course of the next day or two is not just an academic discussion. This is real. This is people's lives are depending on leadership. They're depending on people to solve the problem. And it's going to require residents. It's going to require our nonprofit institutions. It's going to require our leaders, elected leaders, housing advocates. It's going to require all of us to work together. And I'm really happy to say, and I'm very proud to say that there is a collaborative culture in the city of Pomona. Certainly there's more work to be done. This problem will not be solved in a day, a week, or a month, but it is my strong, strong belief that by working together, we'll be able to solve this. I think about some of the work that Pomona, the city of Pomona, is doing, and I'd love to be able to share with all of you what some of that work is. There are some housing developments that are coming forward, but there's more work to be done. And I think one of the key things is for us, as we work through this challenge, is it's going to be critical that we take the time to identify and define the problem, to generate possible solutions, to look at all the alternatives, to decide on a solution and implement the solution. And then once we've done that, to evaluate the outcome. It's going to require that level of detail and intensity on our part, because otherwise we'll be here a year from now or 5 years from now, and we'll be discussing the very same issue. And so this is an important step in particularly number one, which is to identify and define the problem and perhaps generate possible solutions. I'm here with you. I appreciate being given the opportunity to even speak. I know that there's so much work that goes into this effort to put this on tonight. And by the way, I just want to say how courageous you are to put this on a Friday night at 6 p.m. that's you talk about dedication. That is dedication, because I know all of you have long work days, you have a lot going on, you have children, you have family, and it really just speaks volumes about all of you. But I am here with you, I'm here for you, and I look forward to working with all of you in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. I turn it back to you, Frank Guzman Jr.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for your moving remarks. You truly uplifted how crucial this issue is and why this tough conversation needs to happen right now. We're ready to hold this over the next day and uplift the collaborative solutions to come out of it. So next, I would like to introduce Pomona's District 3 Councilmember, Nora Garcia, who will be facilitating a discussion panel regarding the importance of housing to Pomona residents. Councilmember Garcia, we're ready when you are.
Thank you, Mr. Guzman. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nora Garcia, and I'm proud to represent District 3 of the city of Pomona. I have lived in Pomona since the age of 3, so not quite my whole life, but pretty darn close. So let me share with you what brought me to Pomona. My parents were immigrants from Mexico. They met in El Monte. They married in El Monte. I was born in El Monte. And they shared a 2-bedroom apartment with my aunt on my mother's side, my uncle on my mother's side, and his wife. When my mom and dad married, my aunt moved in with friends. My uncle and his wife were able to get their own apartment until, unfortunately, my uncle passed. And then my aunt moved on with her family to the city of Chicago. But I say that because my parents came to Pomona with a dream of not living on top of other families, next to other families, for my play area not to be the stairs and hallway of our second story apartment, but to have a yard and a home and neighbors and little league. And I'm so happy and proud that my parents were able to provide me with all of that when I was growing up. I don't know how they did it to this day, but they did it. But here's the sad reality. In today's housing market, I am not able to provide the same for myself. I have a high paying, well, I'm a teacher, so as high paid as you could be for a teacher. White collar job. I don't have to labor the way my parents did. And yet, because of the cost of living, the cost of down payments, responsibilities of having to help provide for my parents, I am not able to strike out on my own, save enough money for a down payment, or move on. And so it is my belief that if someone who has a college degree and a good job struggles to maintain a lifestyle which the American dream says we should have, what about other families, people who are not as fortunate as I was or am to have my own home, my own yard, my own place? One of my favorite things has always, one of my favorite literary themes has always been a room of your own. What happens when the only thing you have is a room of your own and not a yard, a kitchen, or a living room to freely enjoy? So with that thought, we have we have created a panel of amazing Pomona residents who are here to share their thoughts, their beliefs, and their ideas. I'm going to ask each of them a series of the same questions, but let me introduce them to you today. We have Chairperson Alfredo Camacho from the City of Pomona's Planning Commission. We also have Ms. Mireya Escobar, President and co-founder of Conexión de Padres, a parent advocate group here in the city of Pomona. We have Ms. Frances Jacobo, a lifelong Pomona resident and current of District 3. We have Mr. Paul Hodak. And of course, we have Mr. Reggie Clark, without whom we would not be able to run our Hope for Home facility here in the city of Pomona. So with that, I'm going to start us off with Mr. Alfredo Camacho. Mr. Camacho, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
Hello. So I have what I hope will be some simple but in-depth questions. And the first one is, why is affordable housing important in the city of Pomona?
Yeah, how much time do I have? I'm just kidding. I'll make it quick. I know that there's other panelists. But yeah, I'll start by saying that I struggled with this question because I think it's very complex. And I think that the answer varies depending on who you are and what situation you're in. But I'm going to start very generally, speaking from experience and also speaking from the experiences of my friends and my family and the people that I work with. So I think generally, when you look at needs, we all know like the the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? But even exclusive of that, I think when you look at needs and you look at basic needs, shelter and security are at the very core of all the needs that need to be met. And I think this isn't exclusive to adults. When we think of housing, we think of young adults that could afford somewhere to live, but I think that stable housing, it affects you at every stage of your life, right? Sorry, I hear feedback. When you're young, having a place where you're housed, where you have shelter, where you feel safe, it's important. When you're young, it's a place where you play, where you make new friends that you think are going to be there forever, or where you explore the world for the first time. As a student, a young person, you need a place to study. You need a place that you feel is your own, a place that you identify to. And then as an adult or a young adult, I think having stable housing is a place where it's sort of a representation of all of the hard work that you've worked for. And also it's a place where you find refuge. You can, if you're having a very long day and you want to go somewhere where, you want some peace and quiet and you don't want to be bothered, having stable housing, having somewhere you can go to is important. You know, it's a part of self-care. So I think generally all of those reasons, I think they're important for stable housing. I will say that speaking from personal experience, I think not having stable housing or being a homeowner, and I think that you know, either you're a renter or you're a homeowner, just having a place to call your home that you feel is a guaranteed home, and you don't feel that you're going to be evicted or have to move abruptly, regardless of what that is, having a place to call your own, it affects every aspect of your life. I'll say growing up, I tell this story all the time. I went to 3 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and I went to 1 high school because that's when my parents became homeowners. And I do not remember ever feeling like I belonged. I don't remember feeling like I had a place. So I think it's very important, right? Especially feeling like you belong to a community, having a place to call your own, you know, just having identity, I think is very important. So that is one of the main reasons. And I think the other one is just feeling safe, not having to think about where you're gonna live or how you're gonna pay where you live, where you live is important. It affects every other aspect of your life. I remember a very quick story, again, moved around a lot. I remember leaving, you know, I was in college and I was working, and I remember leaving to work, and we were moving into another apartment. And for some reason, not sure if we couldn't afford it or it wasn't available or whatever, we thought we were moving in, and it didn't work out. And I remember leaving to work and telling my parents, you know, what do I do? I have to go to work, and I'm gonna get out of work. Where do I go? And my mom didn't have an answer for me, you know, and I just remember at work just thinking about it. It consumed every single thought of my day. I couldn't think of anything else. And I think of all of the people that don't even have that family support system that, you know, can put them at rest. So I think at the very core, it's just feeling secure, and being able to achieve every other thing in life. It starts at having a place to live, a stable place to live. So I have a lot more stories, but I'll stop and I'll let everyone else speak.
Thank you, Chair Camacho. I want to say something. You and I have known each other for a number of years. I've heard your story. And I cannot agree more. I was the only friend I had from high school with a home. Everyone else either rented or lived with family. And for a very long time, I was the only one with a college degree. And I very much attribute that to I always knew I had somewhere to land. And this might be getting a little deep, but I do know that there are people in here who are interested in how housing affects children. Do you remember, you just shared a story about you in high school, college. Do you remember what insecure housing did to you, or what issues it created for you? And I'm sorry if I'm totally blindsiding you. What it created for you, or what feelings that triggered in you when you were a younger child experiencing its unstable housing?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I remember being in 2nd or 3rd grade, knowing what rent was. So I'll start there. You know, we have very young children who know what rent is and what bills are, and sort of, you know, internalize all of the stress that their parents feel about finances. And so that's one of them. I remember being in 2nd or 3rd grade, being afraid to ask my mom for money because I knew that she was struggling with rent. The other one was just having a place, like I mentioned, having a place to study or to call my own. For the most part of my life, I never knew what it was like to have your own room. That's why as an adult, I'm very adamant, like I want my own room, I want my own space. I think even if I ever do, you know, live with someone, I still want my own space, because of all of growing up. Either I shared a room with my 2 older brothers, or I slept in the living room. I mean, we had bunk beds in the living room for most of my life. And part of that was that I shouldn't be ashamed as an adult. Like, it's sort of like a badge of honor, not a badge of honor, but it builds character and it's a story I could tell. And it really like helps me make decisions as an adult about housing. But as a young person, I remember not wanting friends over or not having a place to study, just a lot. I think I hid a lot of my life from people. And as an adult, you learn, be outspoken, be outgoing, talk to people. But I think as a young person, I I felt that shame of like, okay, I don't have a place, my parents rent, we're struggling, I don't have my own room, all of those things, they just compounded to where I hid a very large part of my life. But a big piece of it was I was doing homework like in the living room and my brothers are playing video games or fighting with each other. My mom's cooking, my stepdad was doing whatever. And we're all in this little room, and I can't concentrate. And so and I'm sure, especially right now, we saw that issue with COVID-19, right? Where we're all working from home or we have to do online learning. That issue bubbled up and we said, hey, this is a problem. We need quiet spaces. But that problem has been around for decades. I'm 33 years old. I was in elementary school long ago, and that was a problem. So I think that happened, and I think that problem has been around, but I think with COVID, we've seen it sort of bubble up and we've seen that it's real. But for the most part, it was just like the lack of space and the feeling that I'm not enough because my parents rent or because I have unstable housing. And the other part of it was I moved around a lot. I don't have childhood friends. I don't have childhood friends. I don't remember. I think the farthest back I could go is Marshall, like 7th grade. But I have friends who have friends since elementary school. And I don't have that because I moved around so much that I never made connections.
Thank you so much for sharing, Chair Camacho. I'm going to move on to another advocate for youth, and that is Paul Hodda. Hodak. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Director of Operations Community Development for Just Us for Youth. Sir, same question for you. Why is affordable housing important for Pomona? And I'll follow that up with, and how is it affecting the youth that you work with?
Yeah, thank you to the council member Nora Garcia. It's Hudak. I know it's confusing sometimes, kind of like Hudat yeah. So yeah, as city council member Nora Garcia mentioned, I'm the director of operations for a nonprofit here in the city called Just Us for Youth, and we mentor and work with the highest at promise youth within the community or at risk. And housing is important. You heard Alfredo kind of mention a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs or love hierarchy of needs. I'm a big proponent of that and a believer in the desire and the security and the safety that brings. And just to think about within Pomona Unified School District, there's over 22,000 or so kids in the district. Over 3,000 of them are considered homeless. So, and Alfredo kind of spoke to like, how do you expect a kid to, care about their education when they don't even know where they're living or sleeping that night? How can you worry about what we are told that is supposed to be of need? Education, I agree, education is important. I think everyone here would agree with it. But if there's no food on the table, there's no place to put my head at night, we're all sleeping out of the car, or, we all know that Pomona might not always be the safest place. And imagine how it won't be safe if you don't have a place, 4 walls around you to protect you. You have a car door with a window people could see through, or, the parks. I know many of my kids, crash on the parks or sleep in, the kitchen on the floor, and those aren't necessarily the cleanest places. So yeah, I'll kind of just leave it there. Just putting that idea and that the imagination in your mind of like what these kids are experiencing. And what we can't expect them to do a lot more because they can't even get past the day to day. Like, how can they think about their future if they can't think about their today?
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate that sincerely. As a high school English teacher, I've definitely seen that. And and you notice the kids because the kids who walk into your classroom and it's 50 degrees outside and they're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and you ask them, do you have a sweater? And they're like, no, I'm not cold. But you could see the goosebumps on their
Yep.
arm.
Or falling asleep in class because they couldn't sleep, always hungry, snacking in class, getting in trouble because there's no food.
And I actually spend a little insight into my classroom. I have a snack bar. I spend about $100 every 2 weeks getting them all the hot Cheetos they want.
I'm gonna come visit you and grab a bag.
You should, please go for it. I also have a cup of noodle. But they do. I stopped getting mad at students who fall asleep in my class because I know that many of them are suffering through this. But I do want to get a perspective from a couple of parents, and we're lucky to have them on this panel today. I'm gonna start with Ms. Mireya Escobar, the co-founder of Conexión de Padres, who works heavily with our Spanish-speaking population here in the city of Pomona. Mireya, would you please share with us your response to the question, why is affordable housing important in Pomona? And if you can you speak briefly as to, and how does that impact the children in the city?
Sí, Nora, solo me gustaría saber.
Yes, Nora, I just want to know, good evening to everyone. Thank you for being here and for inviting me to the forum. And I just wanted to ask about the translation. And am I going to stop for the translation?
Señora Magdalena,
No?
Magdalena Ríos, ¿cómo
Madeline
quiere
Rios?
que procede Mireya?
Just speak.
We do have translation service from Spanish
No.
to English. Everybody just needs to be on the English channel. So on the bottom of your screen, there should be something that looks like a globe. And if you click that and select English, you will be able to hear the translation from that our interpreter is doing for Mireya. And any questions, feel free to message me. So, Mireya, podemos continuar.
So, Mireya, we can continue, and we are all going to put ourselves on the English channel if we're not there. So that's wonderful. So let me know when I can start. Thank you. So thank you, Nora, for inviting me. I believe that, as Alfredo Camacho said, there are different perspectives, and I want to use this time, but I think that Alfredo Camacho gave a very good introduction, and I am a co-founder of the Parents Club, and I've lived in Pomona for six years. I've been working for 6 years with parents, and I've seen many situations right now. If you ask me, we have 4 families living in a hotel. We have single mothers who are living in a room with 3 kids by themselves. And we are seeing a lot of parents that are immigrating, that are going to different states. And unfortunately, I'm going to talk about a case. It's not just a question of separation of children. The parents also are separated when they're looking for custody. And so this is very important. I have seen it very close up, and it's a problem that is huge. And so I love to come to these forums and see how we can help in this situation and how it affects our children. We know that, but I also want to say that it affects you emotionally. I know families who have left Pomona because their rent is too high, but they don't want to take their kids out of school so that they won't be hit twice emotionally, change the house and then the school, and then the families as well, the mother and father, and another change as well. So I think it's very important because these families, they end up being affected as well in terms of their identity. They love Pomona. They're getting services from Pomona. The kids go to school in Pomona, but when it's time for recreation, they can't participate because they don't live in this city. So it's a very complex issue. We have to see it from different angles. And it's not just a question of rent by itself that is too high. It's very inaccessible for the families of Pomona. I am thinking in terms of culture. I come from Mexico City, and a bit of the culture of my country will have 2, 3, 4 families in a house, but you come to the US and you think you're going to be better, but you compare and you have $1,000 per month as a minimum wage, and then the mother and father are both working because a woman is receiving another $1,000 a month. So the income is $2,000 and the rent is the same, $2,000. So fortunately, people, some people aren't seeing it, aren't living it, but it's really sad. It's emotional. It's a social issue. And it even affects your health, because the Latina families, they don't go to the doctors because before paying for medicine or a doctor's visit, they have to worry about having the basic things for their housing. So thank you, Nora, for putting this on the table. And I feel very emotional because I have to go through what every family is going through. So thank you.
Gracias,
Thank you,
Mireya.
Nora.
Gracias por todo lo
Thank
que
you,
hace por
Mireya,
nuestra
for
comunidad.
everything that you're
Thank you,
doing.
Mireya, for everything you do for our community. As Mireya was saying, it is an emotional topic. The first home I lived in Pomona, I lived there from 89 to 99. And unfortunately, we were not able to remain in that home. My parents bought their house in South Pomona, but as Mireya explained, in order to save me the double trauma of not only losing my home, the only home I had ever known practically, my parents commuted me from South Pomona near the 60 freeway to Pomona High and Emerson Middle School so that I could stay with my friends and stay on the cheer squad and all of that. So I commuted those 20 minutes across town, but I was able to stay across town. I know the families that Mireya speaks about, and they're driving in from Ontario. We had a Gary High School Valley Victorian who was driving in from, I believe, Moreno Valley. So these are very real consequences of having exorbitant rent prices and lack of affordability. One resident in District 3 who has been trying to buy a home as long as I've known her and who has children in the area is Miss Frances Jacobo. Frances, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for coming out of your comfort circle. I ask you to please respond to the question, why is affordable housing important in Pomona, and how have you seen affordable housing affect your children?
It's ever since I lost my husband. Lost my husband through COVID. He passed away through COVID. And it's been stressful. We've been catching up with our rent. You know, we did our rent and we want to buy a home. My kids all pitched in and all started jobs. After they get home from school, they go straight to their work. Because of the fact that we're trying to catch up here, the owner keeps on raising rent and raising the rent, and it's stressful. You know, you go through one loop and then there's another one you have to go through and then another one. And the housing is really bad. You know, we pay so much for a 2-bedroom and there's not enough to catch, you know, you can't. It's impossible. And when an owner doesn't come and fix things that needs to be fixed, but he's there to raise the rent, and you know, we can't catch up when we're trying to buy a home, because I'm trying to buy a home. Where I pay here, I think I can afford to buy a home, to pay a mortgage.
Francis, how much do you pay a month in rent for your 2-bedroom apartment in South Pomona in the District 3 area?
$1,750.
Did you give a first and a last month and a security deposit?
Yes. Okay. And we don't see him. He don't come. He don't come at all. We send it through our bank, and you know, sell it or whatever, but he doesn't come and check it. There's things that need to be done. We have to do it because if it's not, it won't get fixed. And we need to, live. I'm pretty sure he lives comfortable. My kids want to live comfortable too, because I do, we got kids. I got my daughter here who's was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer now. Now we have that one, on top of everything else. It's hard. She's got 5 kids herself, so they live all with me in a 2-bedroom. It's really, and where we live, it's not that great of a place. It's not, to raise a rent to $17.50, you're kidding me. I said, this is ridiculous. I said, it's not a place that says, okay, wow, you pay $17.50 and buy glamorous, you got what a beautiful home. No, it's not. It's not at all. I just pray to God that there's somebody out there who can bring something to people who want to buy a home and who can afford it. If they can afford $17.50 of rent, I'm pretty sure they can afford paying a mortgage. I mean, it's not that bad. And in Pomona, because I don't want to leave Pomona. Like I said, I don't want to leave Pomona. I've been here for 15 years. I lived in West Covina. That's where we came from, and I found in love with Pomona because it's friendly. It's nice to hear people. You could talk to people. It's friendly. It's really friendly. Pomona's a friendly place. People say, "Oh, Pomona, what are you living in Pomona for?" Because I love it, and I tell them, "Oh yeah, I live in Pomona." I says, "Why do you live there? It's an ugly place. You're gonna get killed. You're gonna get killed anywhere." I says, "Anywhere you go, that can happen. It's not that bad. Pomona's not bad. People put it that way that it's bad. It's not."
I would agree with you, Francis, only because every time they tell me, "Why you could afford a house in Fontana or Moreno Valley," I'm like, I'm not leaving. I'm
Exactly.
right here. I've been here
Exactly.
since 1989. I'm gonna have it
Yeah.
out with my brothers, Francis, so I could stay in the house.
See,
But that is my privilege, and I admire you that you are taking care of your daughter with cancer and her 5 children in a 2-bedroom apartment, paying almost $1,800 a month in rent.
yeah.
And
And we do pay electricity and gas. Because I have 14 kids of my own. I have 14 kids. They are big. They're older, and they live there, not with me. Just some of them live, not all of them. Because I think we would have to pick a corner where you're going to sleep but yeah.
and that is also the mentality of family, right? You want to stay close to each other.
Yes.
And
Yes.
sometimes that divides the family, having to move away. But
Yeah.
you did
No.
mention the unaffordability of rent, and I think I'm going to use that to move us along to Mr. Reggie Clark, who works at our Hope for Home Homeless Transition Center. Mr. Clark, why do you think affordable housing is important in Pomona? And maybe you cannot speak to the children aspect, but how do you see affordability as a cause for homelessness, or what with the people that you interact with?
Okay, well, first of all, good evening, everyone. And Ms. Garcia, it is great to see you. And I want to acknowledge the panel that put this, the team that put this together, and acknowledge my panelists that spoke before me. Thank you. And all the champions that's on this platform right now. Because what you need to know is everybody on this platform is a champion in some form. Because if you wasn't, you wouldn't be on here this evening. I have been very blessed to be of service here in the city of Pomona since 2006 in the city of Pomona homeless programs. And I so can relate. I will talk about the children as well, because I not only affiliate with Hope for Home, but I oversee the homeless programs that the city have for families as well. And that's homeless, period. And so right now we are experiencing working with our challenging folks that's in schools that are homeless. And, I so take my hat off to the city of Pomona. Mayor Tim, you and Benita that's on this platform right now, my hat's off to you, because the city of Pomona is the place that have services to assist their people, okay? And so I've been blessed to be able to distribute these programs and assist folks that are in need on a daily basis. To answer your question, as far as the importance of affordable housing, throughout my time being here, I've experienced back in the days where people who were on SSI were able to afford an apartment. And now someone with SSI is almost just as close with someone that's getting GR to be able to afford housing. So it's very challenging for everyone. And you're gonna have to have family members come together and ante up together and to be able to afford something. And so I know here that in the city, we've been doing a lot of positive things to enhance how we're gonna be able to help people. And Mr. Franks and the city always jumping on, making sure we're getting programs and grants to be able to be of service to folks who are struggling, trying to get into a place. You know, I place people in motels on a regular basis. A lot of these families that's in the school districts are coming to us right now, and we are housing them. Hope for Home has been a blessing. I'm so grateful that the city was able to look at that site and Mr. Franks put that together on what that looks like of wraparound services all on one site. Because one thing I really want to let everyone know is that homelessness is just a piece of people's situations. There are many other barriers that folks have to deal with. And so what we did over there was really create something that's positive, to whereas we have other entities on site that can address some of those other things that we're not professionals in, as far as mental health, substance abuse, finding people jobs, and you know, a lot of different avenues. So, you know, once again, I am just so blessed to be a part of being in someone's life that's moving forward. I get the blessing on a daily basis when people come back to me and says, hey, I'm doing well. I'm doing well in my home. And right now, one of the things that we really want to increase on is making sure we do what we call is aftercare, okay? Because one of the things is that we can get people housed, but the retention piece is very valuable. So we're looking at what that looks like and making sure that we are constantly staying on top of revisiting folks, letting them know we're still there, you know, becoming a family. And I believe in family. So, you know, you'll hear me come on platforms and say, good evening, family. And I say that to my participants in our shelter, because everybody needs to feel like they are part of, and they want to feel like they need it and they want it. So, you know, I can go on the soap opera here, because I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I know exactly what we do. And my hat's off to the city of Pomona. We are a model for other cities, okay? You need to hear that we are a model for other cities. And I want to continue doing this. I see Paula Lance on here, Mr. Dick Buns, Jan Chase. I mean, all you guys, I just love it, because this is what we do. You know, this is what we do. So, Norma, I want to thank you for asking me to be a part of this evening. And I have a couple of my staff members on here, and they was excited to be on here too, because this is what we do. Thanks for letting me share that.
Absolutely, Mr. Clark. We would be lost without you. You know, just thinking about this, having housed so many of our families, and I'm going to work my way back here so everyone has a chance to jump in on this. What are the barriers to housing that you see in the city of Pomona for the population you work with?
Was that question for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the barriers are, once again, low income housing. Okay, because without affordable housing, I mean, it's just that much difficult to assist some of the folks that we have that have very low income. So that would be one of the main pieces that I would see as barriers that we have. And because once again, I said we have all of our agencies that are supporting us in some of the other areas to support with the other things that we don't do as professionals. So just trying to get some low income housing up in here would be great.
And do you see that as apartments, single family homes, multiple family homes, or do we need it all?
We need it all. Because certain people are different levels. Okay, so it's important that we look at the thing as a whole, and that is one little piece there, one little piece there, because that's not going to fix the problem. We need to address the whole thing as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. And I see that some of the comments on the chat are actually sharing personal stories of need and necessity currently in the city of Pomona. And I want to take this opportunity to please ask you that if you need help, to please reach out to PomonaConnect.com. I'm putting the website and the phone number in the link here, but the phone number for those of you who need it is 909-620-2453. Please, there's going to be a resource fair in November for Pomona Connect at Washington Park. But if you need immediate assistance, I think I saw a message that says we need help in the next 2 weeks. Please reach out and see if there's anything that we could do to help you with that situation. Okay. So Mr. Michael Whitmer also put in the chat that he's curious to hear from Reggie about the portion of the unsheltered population Hope for Home is able to serve. Mr. Clark, how do you help our unsheltered population?
So once again, Hope for Home was designed to get people housed. So with all the partners that we have on site, we've been able to assist people walking through the stages of getting them into permanent housing. And of course, it's a challenge. Don't let me fool you. It's not like we just can do that overnight. There's a process to it. And so Hope for Home is not so much as an emergency shelter as it is for folks who are looking to move forward and get housed. And so we have all these different things on site, like as I mentioned. And right now, unfortunately, with COVID, you know, we've been hit a couple of times to where we had to be on quarantine. And just so everyone on the platform know, we are off quarantine right now, and we are accepting new intakes to get people in. And we work closely with the police department, Tri-City Mental Health. And so these are some of the things that we are doing. And we've been pretty successful, I would say, based on what we had to work with in getting some folks housed.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I'm going to ask Ms. Frances to please answer the question. Frances, what do you see as barriers to owning a home or living, you know, one family per apartment here in the city of Pomona? What are those barriers in your mind?
Okay, just having someone to lead you, to tell you what to do, you know, okay, start from here. Because there's a lot of people out there selling homes that they tell me, oh, it's, you know, it's don't buy a home yet. But then there's people there, oh, go ahead, you know, it's good to buy a home. You know, stop raising the rent. You know, you don't keep on raising rent and raising the rent. You know, how can we save up to own a home when these owners are raising rent and raising the rent, and there's no how can I say, every 6 months they can raise the rent. We have no rent control, and that's what we need here is rent control, so that we can just stop with raising the rent, so we can afford to buy a home. So we want that luxury, you know. We want my kids want a place, like somebody was saying, that my kids want a place to call their own, because I do have kids who sleep in the living room. I do have kids, you know, and who have a air mattress because they have to sleep, you know. But you know, it's hard. It's hard when you have to. Then 6 months. We raise the rent another $50. Wow, really? So that just puts us more, down and say, okay, well, it is what it is. We have to do it. Then we have to do. We have to stay here. I said we can't say, okay, then we'll go. You have to go look for another place to rent. I won't do that. I won't. If I move from here, I will move to a place where I said I'm gonna call my home. I says I'm not gonna move to another place where I says this is a rent, and the owner's gonna say, well, you can't do this or you can't do that, or oh, there's no animals here, or there's no, my kids adore their dogs, and the dogs we have to keep them quiet because we want the owners, the neighbors telling the owners we have a dog. But it's hard. It's hard.
It is hard, Francis.
It's hard. It's stressful, especially when I lost my husband. That put me into depression. My kids, I don't want my kids, I had to snap out of it. I snapped out of it, and with the help of my kids, they're a blessing, and they helped me snap out of it. And that's what I did. And I'm doing what I can do to get a home. Everything I make, everything I work, I do things, I clean house. If I have to do something to get that money to save a home for my home, that's where it goes.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you so much. Before we move on to Ms. Mireya Escobar for her response to what do you see as the barriers to owning a home, she does say in Spanish in the chat that she would like to know what alternatives or what help assistance we have for people who need housing but are undocumented immigrants. They don't have a social security number. I will say that right before the pandemic, I was trying to help a former District 3 resident who had to leave the city try to find a home that they could purchase. So we went through the whole deal. We found a credit union that would accept their tax ID number instead of a social security number. We were trying to get them to apply for the first time home buyers program offered by the city. And then COVID hit. And then she lost her job in the restaurant field. And then her husband lost his job in the restaurant field. And they were stuck with a $3,000 a month mortgage in the city of Ontario because they had 4 kids and they wanted a yard. And so they could no longer afford to rent in the city of Pomona. They couldn't find a home that suited their needs. And so it is, I will acknowledge that as a barrier for many of our families here in Pomona. I will also acknowledge that some landlords threaten them. Oh, well, you don't want to pay rent or you want me to fix this? Sounds like I'm gonna have to like maybe make a phone call to someone and let them know that you're living here without documents. I've heard that story before too. And it does break my heart, but I do want to acknowledge that comment that Mireya made in the chat and ask her, what barriers do you see for home ownership or housing here in the city of Pomona, Ms. Escobar?
Gracias, Nora.
Thank you, Nora. Truly, Nora, I've seen a lot of things that are problems there for getting housing in Pomona. So the new young generation, they can't get a house in Pomona. The prices are way too high. They're leaving, not just leaving Pomona, they're going to other states. And another problem in Pomona is not just that we need rent control, but with rent control and this price that the owners are asking for a house, it's impossible. I'll give you an example, 1,800, 1,500 for a 1-bedroom apartment, but also they're saying that you can't have more than 3 people or more than a certain number of people. 2 people cannot get enough money to pay for their housing. So I think that there's many problems when you're seeing houses $2,000, $3,000, but they're very strict on the number of people. You can't have more than that limit number of people. These are things that really, I can't imagine how 2 people could pay for such a high rent and they can't even have another friend or relative who could rent with them to help with the same rent. So those are things that I'm seeing also in order to buy a house as well. It's a lot of money. They're talking about $2,000 for houses that are completely destroyed. Little houses, and they end up in the same place, 1 or 2 bedrooms for a small household, and $3,000 for a new family. They're not earning that, so there's a disparity. It's very absurd, I believe. This whole context with the housing plan, there's lots of problems. The price of the houses, rent control, and together with rent control, you have to see the value of the houses. They're selling old houses that are falling apart, and they're asking for even more. So really, the issue is a very
Gracias,
severe one,
Mireya.
very serious one. Thank
I
you,
do
Mireya.
want to recognize that there is a very heartfelt and detailed comment in the chat, and I encourage you all to read that. I do want to acknowledge and apologize to the PLN organizers, Mireya, that we are over time, but Mireya, thank you for your words. Thank you for being here. And I do want to ask Paul. Paul, same question for you. What barriers do you see to home ownership here in the city of Pomona, and how is that affecting the population that you work with?
If we answer that question fully, we'll be here way too long. I think there's a lot of things that, politics, economics, job creation, job availability. You could go on. I don't think it will end. But something that we're doing and thinking about is like being creative and finding other opportunities. Because of COVID, we actually started a transitional age youth, so 18 to about 24, 25-year-old youth who were displaced and homeless because of COVID. We were housing. And one place that we found housing was local churches. They have rooms set up for missionaries to come in, and we were able to essentially turn those into dormitories and get these youth off the streets in churches with a shower, with washer, dryer, kitchen, so that they could have this access and things for them to do. And I think the next part is education and training. Like part of the program we're doing is we're teaching the kids on how to save, how to invest, because those aren't things that you're talked about. And what do I need to do so I can get my own apartment? What opportunities, for additional funding, first-time home buyer. A lot of people, if you don't know about it, don't go for it. What additional resources are there? And I think what's available, having the services to provide those for families, for individuals, because all the information is kept with those that know it and aren't passed down to those who want to know and to learn and to move on and to help their families or themselves if they're single. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. I do want to acknowledge a question by Ms. Deborah Mendez, who asked what the capacity of Hope for Home is, and I will type in that response shortly, Ms. Mendez. I do have that information, but I want to have our chairperson Camacho from the City of Pomona Planning Commission close us out. What do you see as some of the barriers in the City of Pomona? And if you have any closing thoughts for us, I welcome them at this point.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. So I have to agree with all of the panelists that spoke, specifically Mireya. A lot of the comments that you made really spoke to me. And I agree with you, Paul. I think if we talked about this, we'd be here until probably 9 p.m. this Friday. So we will not do that. So I'm just gonna make some really quick points. I think, and this was said in the chat several times, and I think by other panelists, but the biggest one and one of the most important ones is affordability. I think that at the core of everything, housing needs to be affordable. Pomona specifically, for whatever reason, is very expensive, right? And we have a lot of folks who live in multi-generational housing because they have to, whether, you know, yes, we love our parents and we want to take care of them, but a lot of the times we have to. I mean, we know, you know, I'm a proud millennial. I wear that as a badge of honor, but a lot of millennials have to live with their parents until, you know, they are able to buy a home. I know, Nora, you shared that, you know, you are someone who wants to buy a home, but it's not accessible. And, you know, I myself, I'm a young professional. I don't know if I want to buy a home or if I ever will buy a home, but it's just affordability is a really big issue, whether you are a young professional or a family. The fact that housing is treated as a market business and not a utility, right? So like water, electricity, all of those you pay into one, you pay one person, but housing, it's treated like a market. You know, I remember when COVID hit, right? And there were landlords who were saying that they were struggling because they weren't working or they weren't making money, right? I agree, you know, being a landlord or owning property is a way of income, but it is not a livelihood the same way that it is for someone who goes to work from 9 to 5. I know that there's work that goes into it, but I don't think that it should be treated the same way that it, you know, every other livelihood is treated. And so the fact that housing is treated as a, you know, a market and people are able to charge more because there's more demand, that's an issue. That's an issue here in Pomona. And I think that needs to be addressed. The other one is the accessibility of homeownership. I know that Francis, you talked about how much money you pay in rent. Right? I pay nearly $1,800. I live in a one-bedroom apartment here in downtown Pomona because I want to, but I could use that for a mortgage. But the fact is that because of credit, because of being able to save up $10, $20, $30,000 for a down payment, it's not accessible. It's not realistic. So that accessibility is an issue. If someone chooses to own a home or wants to buy a home, it's not accessible to them. And so I think that, you know, finding ways to address that would solve a lot of issues. And I know that there's programs that the city has or like the state has, but a lot of those aren't accessible to a lot of people for many reasons, right? Distrust of the government, language barriers, time, all of those issues. But I think that that's a really big issue. The other one, it was mentioned briefly, the need to diversify the types of housing. Not everyone wants to live in a, you know, a single family home. Not everyone wants to live in an apartment, right? So I think there needs to be like a diversity of the types of housing that people can live in, whether that is housing that's accessible to a young professional who just graduated from college, or a student who grew up in Pomona and wants to go to school in Pomona, or wants to go to college but wants to stay in Pomona, whatever reason. I think that there needs to be a diversity of the types of housing that people have access to. The other one, and this one is really personal to me, not just because of me when I was growing up, but as a young adult, you know, I'm a renter now. And I think the stability for people who are renters is very important. And whether that is in the form of rent control or whether it's in the form of more protection for renters. But there's people who realistically either will never be able to afford a home or don't want to buy a home. Personally, I'll tell you that I don't know if I ever want to buy a home or it'll ever be physically you know, available to myself. But at the same time, if I want to rent for the rest of my life, or anyone wants to be a renter, they should have some stability. If they want to live at the same place, there should not be a danger of like, oh, my rent is going to go up, or oh, like I could be evicted if management changes, or someone wants to develop where I live. So I think that is a really big issue. If you are a renter and you don't want to move and you just want to rent, you know, that needs to be addressed. And I think that that's what a lot of our families are dealing with all the time. And lastly, also very important to me, and I know Councilmember Garcia, you spoke to this, maybe related to a lot of the other issues or barriers that I spoke to, but retention of the people who have roots here. I grew up in Pomona, 33 years old. I've lived here for as long as I can remember. You know, like I mentioned, I went to elementary, middle, and high school here. I am fortunate that I could still live in Pomona. I work in Pomona. I have a semi-well-paying job. I do work at a nonprofit, but I can afford to live here. But myself, you, Councilmember Garcia, and a lot of other people who grew up in Pomona and still live here, we're an anomaly. There's a lot of people who grew up here, who have roots here, who want to live here, but they cannot afford to live here. And so we're not losing. I know someone mentioned, like, how can you have community when people that grew up here have to move? I know a number of people who lived here, who had roots here, who advocated for very important change, who had to move because they couldn't afford to live here. And not just them, but a lot of young people that I grew up with that cannot afford to live here, who leave because housing is really expensive here, or because they went to college and they have student loans and their credit is messed up and they can't qualify to move into somewhere. So there's a lot of barriers to even retaining people who grew up here, who want to stay here, who want to bring all of that history, that talent, that education, and give back to Pomona and improve Pomona, but they can't because they can't live here. So I'll stop there. But that last one that I really is really important to me. And I know that there's a number of people, I even remember Mayor Sandoval speaking to this, is retaining that young talent, and not just young, but just people homegrown, people who have roots here, just retaining them here because it's very important. We don't want to price out people who have history here and who want to improve. And we don't want people, we want people to come to Pomona, right? But we don't want people to come here just because this is a place of opportunity, because it's up and coming, or because it's central. We want people also who value Pomona, who have community here, who have been here for generations or have been here for as long as they've been alive.
Thank you, Chair Camacho. I truly appreciate your comments. Unlike you, I do want a home. I do want a yard. That is, my parents sacrificed so much for us to have that, and I want the same for my children. But you're right. Every single last one of my friends from high school, from middle school, I was very lucky. I got to keep them all. They're gone. They were not able to stay in Pomona. One of them is as far east as Redlands, and another one is in Ontario, and I could name all the cities, but they're no longer here. And so that's very sad. And and just before we start these poor millennials are crying wolf or something, and you could just nod, Alfredo, I take it that even though you don't live with your mom or your parents, you're still supporting them in some financial way every once in a while. So that's the other thing that people don't talk about. First generation immigrant children of immigrants who have gone to college, we are our parents' retirement account. the pipe burst, call your child. You know, you're short on rent this month, call your child. Medical supplies need to be ordered, call your child. And that is a very real consideration when I think about renting an apartment. A lot of people are like, well, you could afford an apartment. I'm like, not if the pipe bursts in my parents' house, I can't. And that has happened. So and it constantly boggles my mind. And I'll close this with the thing that absolutely drove me nuts. And I hope I was able to hold it together during a council meeting. I do not qualify for a first-time homeowner's loan from the city of Pomona because I make too much money. But I apparently am low income enough to qualify for an affordable housing unit in the city of Pomona, according to our inclusion housing ordinance. So which is it? Am I too rich for help, or am I so broke I need it? And that is, I think, a policy issue that we need to acknowledge, where everyone here in the state of California that says this must be solved, can we please talk apples and apples and oranges instead of saying a piecemealing everything? And so with that final outrage of, are we too poor? Are we too rich to get help, or are we too poor and we need help? Figure it out yourselves, you know, young working class millennial professionals. I will close this out and thank the Pomona Leadership Network for setting this up. And of course, for allowing me to go over time. I do apologize, but I hope this forum was helpful, informative, and useful for everyone involved. And if nothing else, it got a load off of our chests after 2 years of dealing with housing in the city of Pomona. And for those of you who don't know, 53% of the city of Pomona is renters. Who owns that 53% of Pomona, and where are they? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Thank you so much, Councilmember Garcia, the rest of our panelists and our audience for your insights and your engagement. And thank you all for sharing your stories. You know, hearing it from the panel, hearing it from our audience members in the chat, like this is clearly a significant and urgent issue that we need to think of solutions for, and I think that's why we're here. And I just want to thank you again, Councilmember Garcia, for helping us make this event and panel happen. Our PLN cohort really appreciates your help. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Judy, Michelle, and Michael, who will walk the audience through our schedule of events for Saturday.
Thank you, Frank. So we talked a lot about resources that are needed. So tomorrow morning, we're actually going to be joined by the neighborhood services and development services. So we're going to start at 9 a.m. with the first-time homebuyer and housing improvement programs. And then at 10 a.m., we will have 2 sessions that will be happening at the same time. One session will be all about ADUs, and another session will be about rental assistance programs. And we hope to see you all there. The links have all been sent in an email, and there's a link with a Google document that has a table with all of the different links. If anybody has any questions, please let us know. I'll pass it on to Michelle now.
Hi, everyone. On top of the workshops that we're able to host, thanks to the leadership of our Neighborhood Services Department and Development Services Department, we do want to encourage everyone who is attending today to please participate in the presentation at 11 o'clock a.m. by Development Services. They're going to be presenting the first draft of Pro Housing Pomona, which is the planned housing element for the city of Pomona. And the entire city community has 30 days that started yesterday to start providing feedback on what that will look like. And what's included in that housing element is plans that the city has in facilitating and supporting the development of nearly 6,000 affordable housing units. So I'm going to put a link in the chat here that allows you to view what the draft plan is. If you have time between today and tomorrow, you don't have to. It's going to be presented tomorrow at 11 o'clock, but we would love it if you could participate in that session as well. Thank you so much. And I'll pass it over to Michael.
Thank you, Michelle. Tomorrow at 12:30, after a short lunch, we'll be conducting a community conversation about how can we promote affordable housing solutions in Pomona in a way that doesn't just build houses, but builds vibrant neighborhoods. Our breakouts are going to focus on 2 broad subjects. First, we're going to ask you to discuss how can we preserve and improve Pomona's neighborhoods while we add new housing units. What will it take for the neighborhoods to organically integrate new neighbors? So we want you to bring your ideas about infrastructure and amenities, but also about better ways of connecting people to build more resilient social fabric. Then we're going to have from that holistic foundation, we're going to have a conversation about how can we promote the development of more affordable housing, and what are we already doing? What might we be able to do better? We hope that you'll bring your ideas about creative new ways that aren't being tried yet for building new homes, and even new ways to own homes. So we hope to see you tomorrow at 12:30 to 2 and build a vision together.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation tonight, and we look forward to seeing you all back here tomorrow.